The microphone screeches as Grace Sullivan grips it too tightly. 1,000 people in the auditorium, all watching. In the third row, headmistress Eleanor Vance is pale. 10 years ago, she said this would never happen, that girls like Grace don't become doctors. But there was the white coat, the diploma, and the question that pierced the silence. How did she do it? The air conditioning hums quietly. The smell of expensive perfume mixes with the fresh paper of the printed programs. Grace's hands are shaking. Cold sweat drips down the back of her neck. Her navy blue dress contrasts with the luxury of the jewelry around her. Camera flashes explode in sequence. First row, Maria, her mother, dabs at tears with a crumpled tissue. Third row, Eleanor Vance clutches her purse on her lap, her face red. In the back, Megan Walsh, the journalist, records everything. Whispers cut the air like blades. Grace wasn't just there to receive the Young Researcher of the Year award. She was there because someone needed to pay. Because 10 years of humiliation, of sleepless nights, of hunger and despair began in that meeting room. And because the woman responsible was still teaching, still judging, still destroying dreams. This time, in front of everyone, the truth would be spoken. Maria cries in the front row because she has carried the guilt for years of taking her daughter to that damned meeting. Dr. Samuel Chun smiles discreetly in the second row because he bet his reputation on Grace when she was just a desperate student asking for help. Megan adjusts her camera because she knows the speech to come isn't about medicine, but about reckoning. Everyone has something at stake. Everyone knows what Grace says now will change lives, or destroy them. But this story didn't begin here. It began 10 years ago on a damp April afternoon, when a proud mother made the mistake of dreaming out loud, when words spoken in public ripped apart the soul of a 16-year-old girl, when a powerful woman used cruelty as a weapon, and when the entire system showed its true face. What happened that day planted seeds of hatred, of determination, of vengeance. To understand how Grace got to this stage, you need to know 3 stories. The story of the parent-teacher conference that turned into a public nightmare. The story of the secret Eleanor Vance kept for 30 years. And the story of the death that connects everything and everyone. 3 layers of truth. 3 reasons for what is about to happen. It all started in a stuffy room at an elite Boston prep school, where the fate of many was decided by a single cruel sentence. On that day, Grace was only 16 and had no idea that the next 2 hours would change her life forever. Subscribe now and hit the bell. Thousands of women have already transformed their lives with our inspiring stories. Don't miss out on this incredible community that strengthens you every day. 10 years ago, Grace woke up at 5 a.m. every day. The alarm clock rang in the tiny bedroom of the 2-room apartment in a working-class neighborhood of Boston. She shared the space with her mother, Maria, who worked as a house cleaner in 3 different houses in Beacon Hill. The smell of cheap coffee filled the air as Grace sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by second-hand textbooks from the public library, curly hair always pulled back in a tight bun, wire-rimmed glasses mended with tape. Her navy blue school uniform had invisible patches on the sleeves. She studied for 2 hours before leaving. Walked 50 minutes to the school because there was no money for the tea. She always arrived first, always left last. At school, everyone knew her as the scholarship kid who spoke to no one, the obsessive nerd, the weirdo who ate alone. Grace didn't care. She had a clear goal, straight A's in everything. 6 hours of studying a day, including weekends. Teachers praised her. Classmates envied her. But Grace didn't trust praise, didn't accept invitations, didn't allow herself distractions. Her flaw was obvious to anyone who looked closely. Fear. Fear of failing. Fear of losing the scholarship. Fear of disappointing the only person who mattered. Her mother had sacrificed everything for her to study at that school. There was no room for error. There was no second chance. Grace's father, Dr. Michael Sullivan, had died when she was 10. A sudden heart attack. He was a cardiologist, but his own heart betrayed him. Grace remembered their last conversation. She was drawing human hearts in a notebook. Her father smiled and said, "Keep drawing, kiddo, but one day you'll be doing it for real." 2 days later, he was gone. Her mother couldn't pay the debts. They lost the house in the suburbs, lost the comfortable life. All that was left was guilt, the unfulfilled promise, the absence that ached every day. Grace built walls. She didn't cry. She didn't ask for help. She didn't allow herself to be weak. The pain was locked in a box at the bottom of her soul. Her dream was impossible for someone like her. Medical school was expensive. Even at a state university, the years of study required full-time dedication. No working, no helping her mother. But Grace kept one object like a talisman. Her father's old stethoscope rolled up in a shoebox under her bed. Every night before sleeping, she would open the box, touch the cold metal, close her eyes and see the white coat. See patients being saved. See her father's smile saying, "You did it." It was a distant dream, a wish that seemed cruel in its impossibility, but it was all she had, and she held on to it with everything she had. It was on a March afternoon that everything began to change. Grace was in the empty lab, wiping down counters after class. Mrs. Evelyn Reed, the biology teacher, walked in carrying a stack of tests. 50 years old, short graying hair, reading glasses hanging around her neck. She stopped, looked at Grace. "You got the top score again?" Grace shrugged. "It's my obligation, Mrs. Reed." Mrs. Reed laughed softly. "Your obligation is to pass. You annihilate the questions. There's a difference." A heavy silence. Grace didn't know what to say. "Have you thought about medicine?" The words hit her like a punch. Grace swallowed. "Every day, then why not try seriously?" Mrs. Reed pulled up a chair, sat down. Grace, still standing, held the cleaning rag. "People like me don't." Mrs. Reed raised a hand, cutting her off. "People like you? Smart? Dedicated? Capable?" Grace shook her head. "Poor." The word came out, bitter. Mrs. Reed took off her glasses, cleaned the lenses slowly. "Nonsense. Your father was a doctor. You have it in your blood." Grace felt her legs weaken. "My father died. He left debts. He left us with nothing." Mrs. Reed stood up, walked over to her, placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "He left you, and you have talent. I can help. Extra lessons, for free. We'll get you ready for the SATs and your college applications." Grace looked into the teacher's eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because I believe in you. And someone needs to." In the following weeks, they met 3 times a week in the empty lab. Mrs. Reed brought books, practice tests, prep materials. She taught basic anatomy, organic chemistry, clinical reasoning. Grace absorbed everything like a sponge. For the first time in years, she felt something other than fear. She felt possibility. Mrs. Reed made only one demand. At the parent-teacher conference next month, Grace needed to present her grades. She needed to talk about her dream of medicine. She needed to make it public. "Your mother needs to hear it from you, not me. And the school needs to know it has a future doctor here." Grace hesitated. "I don't like attention. You'll need to get used to it. Doctors save lives in front of everyone." Reluctantly, Grace agreed. "Okay, I'll do it." She didn't know she was sealing her own fate. The Bradford Preparatory School was one of the most traditional institutions in Boston. Over 150 years of history. Ivy-covered brick walls, lawns cut with military precision, Italian marble hallways that echoed every step. Trophies from academic and athletic tournaments filled bulletproof glass cases in the main halls. Portraits of illustrious alumni covered an entire wall. Politicians, CEOs, artists. All smiling, all white, all rich. The air smelled of expensive furniture polish and imported coffee from the premium cafeteria. Students arrived in German cars, dropped off by uniformed drivers. Designer backpacks, sneakers that cost more than Grace's rent. Swiss watches on teenage wrists. The hierarchy was crystal clear. Paying students were at the top. They sat at the central tables in the dining hall. Through exclusive parties, formed closed cliques. Below them, a few academic scholarship students. They were tolerated as long as they knew their place. They didn't complain, didn't stand out too much, didn't bother anyone. Grace was on a full scholarship, 100%. That came with invisible but brutally enforced rules. Use the back restrooms, not the main ones. Don't use the cafeteria, bring food from home. Don't participate in extracurriculars that required special uniforms. Don't draw attention. The school offered a first-class education. In return, it demanded invisibility. The person who ran this system with an iron fist was headmistress Eleanor Vance, 58 years old. Dyed blonde hair pulled into a severe bun. Impeccable gray skirt suits. Heels that clicked loudly in the hallways, announcing her arrival. She had been a chemistry teacher for 20 years before becoming headmistress, known for impossibly high standards, for expelling students for minor infractions, for protecting the school's reputation above all else. There were rumors she eliminated problem scholarship students without hesitation, created reasons, invented flaws. Her justification was always the same, maintaining the standard of excellence that the paying families expected. Grace knew Vance was watching her. Long stares in the hallways. Questions about her grades to other teachers. Once Grace heard the secretary comment, "The headmistress asked about you today. Wanted to know if you were causing trouble." Grace's stomach turned to ice. She didn't cause trouble. She barely spoke, but now she understood. Standing out was the problem. Being too good when you were poor was an annoyance. It broke the comfortable narrative that talent and money went hand in hand. Grace tried to be more discreet, stopped raising her hand in class, hid her perfect scores. But it was too late. She was already on Vance's radar. And when Mrs. Reed proposed the presentation at the conference, Grace should have refused. She should have known that for people like her, visibility was dangerous. The first sign came 2 weeks before the conference. Grace found her name crossed off the list for the National Biology Olympiad. Mrs. Reed had nominated her. She had been excited. It was a chance at a college scholarship. She ran to the main office. Miss Claudia, the secretary, avoided her gaze. It was the headmistress's decision. No justification was given. "Can I speak with her?" Miss Claudia shook her head quickly. "She's busy." "Very busy," Grace insisted. "This is about my future." The secretary sighed. "Just let it go, kid. It's not worth it." And before Grace could ask what that meant, Miss Claudia turned away and pretended to answer the phone. The message was delivered. Someone didn't want Grace to shine. 2 days later, Vance appeared in the classroom during biology. She interrupted Mrs. Reed mid-explanation. "I need a minute." Mrs. Reed frowned. "Of course, headmistress." Vance walked to the back of the room, stopped next to Grace's desk. The girl felt all eyes on her. Vance smiled. A cold, calculated smile. "I hear you want to go into medicine." Grace swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." Vance tilted her head. "Interesting. Very ambitious." A heavy silence. "Ambition is fine as long as it's realistic." Grace gripped her pencil. "I am realistic." Vance's smile vanished. "I hope so. Disappointments are cruel, especially for those who can't afford to fail." She turned and left. Mrs. Reed looked at Grace, worried. The message was clear. Be careful. The night before the parent-teacher conference, Grace couldn't sleep. Maria was excited, thrilled. She was going to wear her Sunday dress, the best one she had. "I'll finally be able to say my daughter's going to be a doctor. Mom, maybe it's better if we don't." Maria stopped, looked surprised. "Why?" Grace couldn't explain the knot in her stomach. "The bad feeling. I just think it's better to wait." Maria put down the iron, sat on the bed next to her daughter, took her hand. "Honey, you deserve this. You deserve to dream big. Your father would be so proud." Grace hugged her mother, smelled the cheap laundry detergent on her dress. "Okay, Mom, we'll go together." They slept holding each other that night. The next morning, Grace woke up with her heart pounding. Something was wrong. She could feel it. It was precisely this dream, revealed at the meeting the next day, that would lead Grace, hours later, to make the most painful decision of her life. The conference room was stuffy, 40 chairs filled. Fathers in expensive suits, mothers with discreet but valuable jewelry, French perfume mixed with the smell of coffee served in porcelain cups. Grace and Maria sat in the front row as Mrs. Reed had requested. The teacher had arranged everything. Grace would present her grades, talk about her dream of medicine, and the parents would see that scholarship students could be examples. Vance stood at the back of the room, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The academic coordinator led the meeting, announcing awards, events, test results. Then the moment came, and Mrs. S. Maria Sullivan asked for the floor. Maria stood up, hands shaking, clutching her old purse to her chest. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria. I'm Grace's mother." She pointed to her daughter. Grace sank into her chair, her face hot. "I just wanted to thank this wonderful school. My daughter has excellent grades, and she has a dream." A dramatic pause. Maria smiled, proud. "She's going to be a doctor." Silence. Some parents looked curious. Others frowned. Maria continued, excited. "I know it's hard. It will take a lot. But she's dedicated. She studies every day, and I believe in her." She sat down. Grace wanted to disappear. Mrs. Reed smiled encouragingly. Then Vance made her move. The headmistress walked to the front of the room, her heels clicking loudly on the floor. She stopped next to Maria, smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely, Mrs. Sullivan. A mother should always dream for her children." She paused. The air grew heavy. "But I must be honest with you." Grace's stomach dropped. Vance continued, her voice calm, almost gentle. "Your daughter will never be a doctor. Accept it." The words exploded in the room like a bomb. Maria blinked, confused. "What?" Vance sighed theatrically. "Medicine isn't just about grades. It's about posture, breeding, the right network, financial resources, things your daughter unfortunately does not have." Grace couldn't breathe. The world spun. Distant voices, muffled laughter. Someone whispered, "She's right. Another poor thing has to be realistic." Grace looked at Mrs. Reed. The teacher was on her feet, mouth open, outraged. She looked at her mother. Maria had tears in her eyes, her face red with shame. She looked at Vance. The headmistress was staring directly at her, challenging. But headmistress, Grace began, her voice trembling. My grades are the best in the class. Vance turned to her. Grades aren't enough, dear. Medicine requires a certain class, something that isn't taught in books. Do you understand what I'm saying? Grace understood perfectly. You're saying I'm too poor, Vance smiled. I'm saying it's better to be realistic now than to suffer later, Mrs. Reed exploded. This is absurd. Grace has all the potential. Vance cut her off, her voice cold. Mrs. Reed, I appreciate your opinion, but I have run this school for 8 years. I've seen dozens of cases just like this. Illusions that end in failure and debt. I am protecting this girl. Mrs. Reed took a step forward. Protecting her? You're destroying her? Vance held up a hand. Enough. This conversation is over. She turned to the other parents. Would anyone else like to speak? Silence. No one moved. No one defended Grace. Some mothers looked on with pity, others with disdain. One father checked his phone, bored. Vance smiled, satisfied. Excellent. We can continue. Grace didn't hear the rest of the meeting. She sat there, body rigid, eyes fixed on the wall. Her mother cried softly beside her. Mrs. Reed tried to approach them afterward, but Vance blocked her, saying they needed to discuss inappropriate behavior at meetings. When it was all over, Grace and Maria left in silence. They walked down the hall. Grace heard whispers. Look, the girl who wants to be a doctor. Poor thing. No self-awareness. The mother encouraging delusions. What a shame. They reached the gate. Olivia, a classmate, was leaning against the wall with other girls. She looked at Grace and laughed loudly. A doctor, can you imagine? She barely has decent clothes? Her friends laughed too. Grace quickened her pace. Maria stumbled, but kept up. On the street, finally alone, Maria stopped. She grabbed her daughter's arm. Honey, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. I ruined everything. Grace looked at her mother, saw the pain, the guilt, the love. She shook her head. It wasn't you, Mom. It was her. Maria wiped her tears. What she said isn't true. You can be anything you want. Grace wanted to believe it. But Vance's words echoed, never be a doctor. Accept it. They walked home in silence. In the small apartment, Grace went straight to her room, locked the door, lay on the bed. She didn't cry. She just stared at the ceiling, mind empty, heartbroken. What Grace didn't know was that someone had filmed it all. Olivia, the wealthy classmate, had recorded the entire humiliation. She thought it was funny. She posted it on the school's social media group that night with the caption, When Reality Hits. In 2 hours, the video had leaked to other networks. In 6 hours, it had 50,000 views. In 12 hours, it was on local news sites. In the morning, Grace woke up to her phone exploding. Messages from strangers, some supportive, many mocking. The video had 5 million views. Hashtag Justice for Grace. She was viral. And life would never be the same. Maria entered the room, phone in hand, face pale. Honey, have you seen? Grace took the phone, watched the video. Saw her mother speaking, proud. Saw Vance destroying her dream. Saw her own face frozen in shock. The comments were brutal. She's right, poor people can't afford to be doctors. Poor girl. Someone had to tell her the truth. This is pure elitism. How disgusting. Vile headmistress. But also, the girl really is deluded. The mother isn't helping. They just want attention. Grace felt a surge of anger. She hadn't asked for this. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to study in peace. The phone rang. Unknown number. Grace answered. Hello? A professional female voice. Grace? My name is Megan Walsh. I'm an investigative journalist. I saw your video. I'd like to talk. Grace hesitated. I don't want to talk to the press. Megan continued quickly. I understand, but this is bigger than you now. This headmistress has done this before. To other students. I have sources. I can help. Grace sat up on the bed. Other students? Yes. At least a dozen in the last few years. Talented scholarship students. All of them sabotaged. A heavy silence. Why would you help me? Because, Megan replied, someone needs to expose this. And you have the platform now. Think about it. Call me back. She hung up. Grace looked at her mother. Maria was in the doorway, waiting. What do we do? Grace didn't know. Part of her wanted to disappear. Change schools. Forget everything. But another part, smaller but growing, wanted to fight, wanted to prove Vance wrong, wanted justice. She thought of her father, of the old stethoscope under the bed, of the promise she made at his casket. She stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the street where she grew up, the simple triple-decker houses, the people working hard just to survive. She turned to Maria. I'm going back to school. Maria's eyes widened. Are you sure? Grace nodded. If I disappear now, she wins. And other girls will suffer the same. I can't let that happen. On Monday, Grace went back to school. TV crews were at the gate. Journalists shouting questions. Grace, how do you feel? Are you going to sue the school? Did the headmistress apologize? Grace kept her head down, pushed through the crowd. Security guards escorted her inside. In the hallway, students stopped, stared. Some clapped. Others turned away. Grace went straight to the headmistress's office, knocked on the door. Come in, said Vancy's voice. Grace opened it. The headmistress was sitting, posture erect, expression hard. Sit down. Grace remained standing. I came to tell you I'm not giving up. Vance steepled her fingers. Giving up on what, exactly? On medicine. Vance gave a tired smile. Grace, you don't understand. The world doesn't work like it does in movies. Grace took a step forward. And you don't understand that, you just made an enemy. Vance stood up. Threats will get you nowhere. Grace shook her head. It's not a threat, it's a promise. I will become a doctor, and when I walk across that stage to get my degree, you will be there, watching, and you will eat every word you said. Vance walked around the desk, stopped inches from Grace, face to face. I've seen this story before, girl. I know how it ends. Grace didn't back down. Then prepare for a different ending. She turned and left, slammed the door. In the hall, she was shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from determination. For the first time since the meeting, she felt something other than shame. She felt power. The school called an emergency meeting that afternoon. The board of trustees, faculty, administration. Vance tried to control the damage. Said she was misinterpreted. That she only wanted to be realistic. That she had always supported students from all backgrounds. But the video was there. Clear. Brutal. Indefensible. Some parents demanded her resignation. Others defended her, saying she was right. Just too harsh in her delivery. Mrs. Reed stood up and announced she would not work at an institution that treated students this way. 3 other teachers followed her. The school was split. On one side, those who saw Grace as a victim. On the other, those who saw her as a troublemaker, the cause of a scandal. Vance left the meeting defeated. For the first time in 8 years, her power was threatened. She went back to her office, locked the door, sat down, looked out the window. She saw Grace in the courtyard surrounded by a few supportive classmates. The girl was laughing at something someone said. Vance felt something strange. It wasn't remorse. It was fear. Fear that this girl might actually succeed. That she might prove everyone wrong. That she might expose secrets Vance had kept for 30 years. She picked up the phone, dialed a number. Counsel, I need you. I have a problem. A student is causing reputational damage to the school. Yes, I need legal options. I want her out of here. But what Vance didn't know was that this private conversation was being recorded, that Megan, the journalist, had sources inside the school, that Vance's every move was being documented. And in the days to come, secrets buried for 30 years would begin to surface. About a young medical student who dropped out in her 3rd year, about a degree that was never completed, about a lie that became a career, about falsified credentials, and about the real reason Eleanor Vance hated seeing poor girls dream of a white coat, because she had been one of them, and she had failed. Megan showed up at Grace's apartment 3 days after the video went viral. 35 years old, short brown hair, jeans and a leather jacket, a folder under her arm. Can I come in? Grace hesitated. Maria from the kitchen called out, Let her in, honey. Maybe she can help. Megan sat on the worn-out sofa, opened the folder. I have something you need to see. She pulled out documents, old photos, notes. I started digging into Headmistress Vance after your video exploded, and I found a pattern. In the last 10 years, 15 scholarship students have left Bradford Prep, all with exceptional academic potential, all interested in elite careers, medicine, law, engineering. All of them left after an incident involving the headmistress. Grace took the photos. Young faces, girls like her, Megan continued. I managed to contact 8 of them. They all tell the same story. Vance discouraged them, created obstacles, blocked opportunities, until they gave up or transferred. Grace felt anger rising. Why didn't anyone report it? Megan sighed. Fear, shame, lack of proof. But now we have you. Your story is public. People are paying attention. If the other victims join in, we can build a case. Grace looked at her mother. Maria nodded encouragingly. What do I need to do? First, said Megan, we need to understand why she does this, and I have a lead. She pulled out another document, a copy of an old university transcript. Eleanor Vance enrolled in medicine at Tufts University in 1987. Grace's eyes widened. She studied medicine? Megan nodded. For 3 years. Then she disappeared from the records. never graduated. Grace processed the information, so she wanted to be a doctor too, and she couldn't do it. Exactly, Megan leaned in. I'm trying to find out what happened, why she dropped out, but the records from that time are hard to access. I need someone who was in her class, someone who remembers. Grace looked at the old photo of Vance on the document. Young, hair down, a genuine smile. So different from the bitter woman of today. She was like me, Grace whispered. Megan agreed. And something turned her into this. While Megan investigated, Grace went back to her classes. But everything had changed. Mrs. Reed was gone. She had been transferred to another school district far away. As punishment for publicly defending Grace, the new biology teacher was distant, cold, sticking to the curriculum with no emotional engagement. Grace felt the void. Mrs. Reed had been her only ally inside the school. Now she was alone. She tried calling the teacher several times. Voicemail. Unanswered texts. Until a week later, Mrs. Reed finally called back. Grace, I'm sorry. I can't help you directly anymore. Vance threatened me. Said if I kept in contact, I'd lose my teaching license. Grace felt tears burning her eyes. I understand. Mrs. Reed sighed on the other end. But don't you give up. Keep studying. I believe in you. She hung up. That night, alone in her room, Grace finally allowed herself to break. She cried. For the first time since her father's funeral, she cried uncontrollably. Maria heard her through the door but knew her daughter needed that moment. Grace pulled the shoebox from under her bed. Opened it. Her father's old stethoscope shined in the dim light. She held it to her chest. Dad, I don't know if I can do this. It's too heavy. Everyone is against me. Even the person who tried to help got punished. Maybe the headmistress is right. Maybe I'm just a deluded poor kid. Maybe I should just accept my place. The words came out bitter. She lay down, clutching the stethoscope, and cried herself to sleep. She dreamed of her father. They were in the hospital where he worked. Michael wore his white coat, stethoscope around his neck. He was holding Grace's hand, a child again, walking her through the halls, showing her everything. See, honey? This is where we save lives. It doesn't matter if the person is rich or poor. Pain doesn't have a social class. Death doesn't discriminate. And doctors shouldn't either. He stopped, looked her in the eyes. You're going to face people who say you can't, that you don't belong here. But remember, I heard that too. My whole family said a poor kid from Southie doesn't become a doctor, that I was dreaming too big. Grace in the dream asked, and how did you do it, Dad? Michael smiled. I just didn't quit, simple as that. I fell, I got up, I fell again. I got up again. Until the day I put on this coat and nobody could take it from me. Grace woke up. 5 a.m. Her face was wet with tears. But something had changed. The pain was still there. So was the fear. But now there was clarity. She got up, went to her desk, opened her books, began to study. Maria woke up an hour later and found her daughter hunched over a human physiology textbook, pen in hand, a notebook full of notes. Honey? Grace looked up. I'm not quitting, Mom. Vance wants me to disappear. To accept failure. But I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to study harder than ever. I'm going to get even better grades. I'm going to prove her wrong. And when I succeed, she'll have to watch and remember that she could have supported me, but she chose to destroy me. Maria hugged her daughter. Hard. Long. I love you so much. Grace rested her head on her mother's shoulder. I know. While Grace studied obsessively, Megan kept digging. She found Robert Andrews, a former classmate of Vance's from medical school. He was 60 now, retired, living in Vermont. He agreed to a video call. I remember Eleanor, Robert said, adjusting his glasses. She was brilliant, one of the best in our class. Came from a poor family, worked days, studied nights, had a fire in her eyes, wanted to be a cardiologist. Megan typed furiously. What happened? Robert's face turned serious. In our third year, there was an incident. A professor, Dr. Silvana Roca, humiliated Eleanor publicly during clinical rounds. Said she didn't have the bearing of a doctor. That poor girl shouldn't be taking spots from people who actually had a future in the profession. It was brutal. We all heard it. Megan felt her stomach clench. And Eleanor? Robert sighed. She fell into a deep depression. Stopped coming to class. Tried to kill herself twice. Her family had her committed. When she got out, she dropped out of school. Never came back. Years later, I heard she'd become a chemistry teacher at a private school. I thought she'd moved on. But now, seeing what she did to this Grace girl, I get it. She never moved on. She became the very professor who destroyed her. Megan ended the call. Her hands were shaking. She had the explanation. Vance didn't hate poor girls. She hated what they represented. The younger version of herself, still full of hope. Destroying them was her way of destroying the pain of her own failure. Megan's article ran on the front page of the newspaper. Headmistress who humiliated student dropped out of med school after same humiliation. The article detailed everything. Vance's past. The 15 sabotage students. The similarities between the cases. The unconscious revenge against her own past. Within 24 hours, the story was on every news channel. Vance, the cruel headmistress, became Vance, the victim turned villain. Public opinion split even further. Some felt sorry for her. Others said trauma doesn't excuse cruelty. Education activists called for system reform. Politicians used the case to promote inclusion bills. Grace watched it all from a distance, emotionally confused. How could you hate someone who had suffered the same way you had? At the school, the pressure mounted. The State Department of Education opened a formal investigation. Vance was suspended indefinitely while the case was reviewed. An interim headmaster took over. Grace thought things would get better, but they got worse. Now she was constantly hounded by reporters at the school gate. Paying students avoided her, afraid of being associated with the scandal. Teachers walked on eggshells, unsure how to treat her. Grace became a symbol, not a person. She hated it. She just wanted to study. But every day brought something new, interviews asking for her story. Nonprofits wanting her as a spokesperson. Politicians using her name in speeches without her permission. Things escalated when the school, through its lawyers, fought back. They claimed Grace had violated the confidentiality terms of her scholarship by allowing the video to leak. They argued that she or someone close to her had deliberately made public what should have been a private matter. They threatened to revoke her scholarship and sue Maria for moral damages to the institution. The school's lawyers showed up at their apartment with an official notice. Maria read it, her face pale. "Honey, they're asking for $10,000 in damages." "We don't have that." Grace took the paper. Felt panic rise. If she lost her scholarship now in her senior year of high school, she would lose everything. She couldn't apply to college. She couldn't graduate. The dream would end right there. Vance, even while suspended, still had power. She orchestrated it all, used her connections with the school's board, pressured influential parents to support the legal action. She created a narrative that Grace was an opportunist, using the incident to gain fame and money through interviews. Some tabloid websites bought the story. Articles appeared. Humiliated girl cashing in on drama. Poor family uses victimhood to extort rich school. Grace read it and wanted to be sick. How could people twist the truth so much? She hadn't asked for any of this. Hadn't made a single dollar. She just wanted justice. But the smear machine was in full effect. Megan tried to help, publishing defensive articles. But the lines were drawn. Half the country saw Grace as a hero. The other half saw her as an opportunist. Maria was fired from one of her cleaning jobs because the employer, a mother from the school, said she didn't want problematic people in her house. Money got even tighter. Grace considered taking the settlement offered by the school. Drop all accusations. Give up any lawsuit in exchange for keeping her scholarship and finishing the year in silence. It would be simple, pragmatic, sensible. She was about to accept when something unexpected happened. At the critical moment when all seemed lost, as Grace was about to sign the non-disclosure agreement, her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered. "Grace? My name's Dr. Samuel Chun. I'm a cardiologist. I worked with your father." Grace sat down, her legs shaking. "You knew my father?" "Yes. Michael was my resident. I trained him. He was one of the best I've ever seen. I was devastated when he died." An emotional silence. "Why are you calling me?" "Because I saw your story. And because I found out something important." Dr. Chun paused dramatically. "Eleanor Vance never finished med school." "I know, but there's more. She has been working for 25 years as a teacher with falsified credentials. The chemistry degree she used to get hired is a fake. She forged her documents." Grace stopped breathing. "How do you know?" Dr. Chun explained. "I have a friend on the state licensing board. He checked for me. There's no record of her. The diploma is a fake. Her entire career is a lie. She should never have been allowed to teach. She should never have become headmistress. It's all built on fraud." Grace looked at the agreement on the table, at the pen in her hand. "Can you prove it?" "I can, and I will. I've already contacted the authorities. But I thought you should know first. You don't need to take that deal. You have the power now. Use it." Grace tore the paper in half. "Thank you, Doctor." Dr. Chun chuckled softly. "Your father would be proud. Keep fighting." He hung up. Maria looked at her daughter, confused. "What happened?" Grace smiled. For the first time in weeks, a genuine smile. "What happened is that Eleanor Vance just lost. The truth is coming out. And when it's all out, there will be nothing left of her." Maria hugged her daughter. "Is it going to be okay?" Grace nodded. "It is, but not the way we imagined. It's going to be better." That night, Megan published the bombshell. Headmistress who humiliated student worked 25 years on forged degree. The scandal exploded. Vance was arrested for fraud and practicing a profession without a license. The school panicked, dropped the lawsuit against Grace, offered $1 million settlement to avoid more scandal. Grace refused. "I don't want money. I want change." But Vance didn't know the worst was yet to come. And within weeks, as investigators dug deeper, they would discover that 3 former students she had expelled years ago had taken their own lives. One of them, Leah Price, had committed suicide 6 months after being publicly humiliated by Vance in a school assembly. The family never sued, never spoke, until now. And when that information came to light, Grace would realize this was never just about her. It was about all of them. And the responsibility to end the cycle of pain was now in her hands. Tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Leave your like too. Seriously, I read them all and I make a point to answer every single one with so much care and attention. The news about Leah Price came on a rainy Tuesday. Megan called, her voice shaking. "Grace, I need to tell you something. The family of a former student contacted me. Leah Price. She was at Bradford 5 years ago. Vance humiliated her in an assembly, told her she'd never be a lawyer." Grace felt her stomach drop, and a heavy silence on the other end. Megan took a deep breath. Leah killed herself 6 months later. She left a note. She blamed the school. She blamed Vance. The family kept quiet out of shame. Now they want to talk. Grace let the phone fall. Her hands were trembling. Maria ran to her. "What is it?" Grace looked at her mother, her eyes vacant. "She killed someone. Eleanor Vance actually killed someone." The next few days were chaos. The media exploded with the revelation. Leah's family gave a tearful interview showing the suicide note. Vance was indicted for harassment leading to death. Protests in front of the school. Parents pulling their kids out. Teachers resigning en masse. The centuries-old institution was crumbling, but what no one expected was the public backlash against Grace. A portion of the public started blaming her. If you hadn't exposed this, Leah would be resting in peace. You're reopening the family's pain for attention. You're an opportunist using someone else's death. The comments were brutal, vicious. Grace read everyone, unable to stop, even as Maria begged her to put the phone down. The school, in desperation, hired a PR firm. They spun a narrative. Grace was destroying a respected institution for personal revenge. That she was being manipulated by an unscrupulous journalist. That Leah already had pre-existing psychiatric problems. Conservative websites bought the story. Influencers with millions of followers attacked Grace. A hashtag emerged, Grace the Liar. It trended for 3 days. The threats began. Messages saying she should follow Leah's path. That the world would be better off without her. Maria had to change their phone number. They closed the blinds. They stopped going out. The lawyer Megan had recommended called. "Grace, I need to warn you. The school is preparing a massive lawsuit. They're going to allege defamation, material damages, conspiracy to destroy a reputation, all told about $500,000. Grace felt the world collapse. $500,000? I'll never have that in my life. The lawyer sighed. I know. And they know it. The strategy is to break you financially before it even gets to trial. To force you to give up. You have 2 options. Take a settlement and a gag order, or fight a legal battle that could last for years. Grace hung up. Looked around the tiny apartment. Unemployed mother. 0 savings. Uncertain future. And now, half the country hated her. Mrs. Reed managed to get through the blockade and visited her in person. She sat on the sofa, held Grace's hands. "Listen, I know it's heavy. I know it feels hopeless. But you cannot give up now." Grace pulled her hands away. "I can't take it anymore, Mrs. Reed. I just wanted to study. That's it. And now there's a dead girl, a school closing. Hundreds of people losing their jobs, and everyone is blaming me." Mrs. Reed shook her head. "No. Vance did this. Not you. You just turned on the light. The cockroaches scattering aren't the light's fault." Grace started to cry. "But Leah..." Mrs. Reed held her firmly. "Leah deserves justice. Her family deserves it. And only you can give them that. If you stop now..." She died for nothing, but the words didn't reach her. Grace was sinking. She stopped studying, stopped eating right. She spent her days in bed staring at the ceiling. Maria tried to talk to her, but Grace wouldn't respond. 3 days after Mrs. Reed's visit, Maria came into the room with a box. The shoebox. She opened it, took out the old stethoscope, sat on the bed, put the stethoscope in her daughter's hands. "Your father faced something similar," Maria began. Grace looked at her mother, no energy to reply. Maria continued. When he was in college, a professor falsely accused him of cheating on an exam. Said a poor Irish kid from Southie wasn't smart enough to get the top grade. Tried to expel him. Your father fought alone. No lawyer, no support. It took him 6 months to prove his innocence. He almost gave up so many times. Grace finally spoke, her voice hoarse. How did he keep going? Maria smiled, tears in her eyes. He remembered why he started. He remembered the first patient he wanted to save, his own father, your grandfather, who died of cancer without treatment because they had no money. He promised his dead father he would become a doctor, and he kept that promise. It didn't matter how long it took, how many times he fell, he got up. Maria took Grace's hand. You made a promise too at your father's funeral. I saw you. You knelt by the casket and promised you'd be a doctor, that you'd save lives. Remember, Grace remembered. 6 years ago, the cemetery, the rain. Her touching the casket and whispering, I promise, Dad. But now it seemed impossible. How could she study medicine with no money? How could she pass her SATs carrying the weight of someone else's death? How could she live knowing there were people who hated her so much they wished she were dead? Grace looked at the old stethoscope, touched the cold metal, closed her eyes, thought of her father, of that last talk in the hospital. His words, doctors save lives. It doesn't matter if the person is rich or poor. Pain doesn't have a social class. She opened her eyes, looked at her mother. I don't know if I can, Mom. Maria hugged her daughter hard. You don't have to know. You just have to try. One day at a time. That night, Grace left her room for the first time in days. She ate with her mother, took a shower, sat at her desk with her books, opened to the bookmark where she had stopped. Human Physiology, Chapter 12. The words danced on the page. Her mind wouldn't focus, but she read. One page, then another. When her mother went to bed at 11, Grace kept going. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2, 3. When the sun came up, she had finished the chapter and answered 20 old exam questions. She hadn't retained it all. It wasn't brilliant, but she had studied, and it was a start. Dr. Chun called at the end of the week. Grace, I have a proposal. I need an assistant in my office. Administrative work. File and scheduling, the basics. It pays little, but it's something, and you can shadow me on rounds. Learn and practice. Grace hesitated. You think that's a good idea? With the whole scandal? Dr. Chun laughed. Exactly because of the scandal. You need to remember why you're doing this, to see doctors working, saving lives, helping people. It will reconnect you with your purpose. Grace accepted. She started the following Monday. A simple clinic. Humble patients, Doctor. Chun took Medicare patients, never overbilling. Grace saw elderly people relieved, children smiling, mothers crying with gratitude, and she remembered. This was it. This was what it was about. But reality didn't stop hitting. The school's lawsuit was moving forward. Vance, even in jail, had powerful lawyers working. They argued she was a scapegoat for a systemic problem, that Leah Price had a prior diagnosis of depression, that there was no proof of a causal link between the humiliation and the suicide. Public opinion remained divided. Grace had to make a decision, accept a settlement with a minimal payout and a gag order, or fight in court for years, risking losing everything. The deadline was Friday. She had 3 days to decide. Grace visited her father's grave, brought flowers, sat on the damp grass next to the headstone. Dad, I don't know what to do. If I take the settlement, I betray Leah. I betray all the girls she hurt, but if I fight, I could destroy my family. I could lose my chance to be a doctor. I could end up with debts I'll never pay. The wind rustled the trees. Silence. Grace continued. You always said being a doctor was about saving lives. But what if the life I need to save right now is my own? Is it selfish to take the deal and move on? Or is it survival? More silence. Just the sound of distant birds. She thought of Leah, of the suicide note. The words, I can't stand being treated like trash just for wanting to dream. She thought of the other students, the 15 derailed lives, the crushed dreams. She thought of herself, 16, hearing those words in the meeting. Your daughter will never be a doctor, accept it. She stood up, brushed the grass off her pants, looked at her father's headstone one last time. I'm sorry, Dad, but I have to do this my way, the way I can survive. She left the cemetery with her decision made. They wouldn't take the deal, but she wouldn't fight on their terms either. On Friday, Grace called the lawyer. I'm not taking the deal, the lawyer sighed. Then prepare for a long fight. Grace cut him off. I'm not fighting in court. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I have my SATs in 8 months. I'm doing it differently. I'm going to disappear. I'm going to study. I'm going to get into med school. And in 10 years, when I walk across that stage to get my degree, everyone will remember this story. And they'll see she was wrong. That's my revenge. Silence on the other end. Smart, the lawyer said finally. Very smart. Grace went to see Megan. The journalist was in her apartment editing stories. Grace sat down. I'm going dark. No more interviews. I'm not commenting on the lawsuit. I'm focusing on studying. Megan started to protest, but Grace held up a hand. You keep digging. You keep exposing, but without me, my part is different now. I have to prove it with results, not with words. Megan thought for a moment, nodded slowly. I can respect that. But when you graduate, I get the exclusive. Grace smiled. For the first time in weeks, a real smile. Deal. And that's when Grace did what no one expected. She disappeared, got off social media, stopped answering reporters. She transferred quietly to a public high school, worked part-time with Dr. Chun, studied the other 12 hours of the day. Maria got a new job. They survived, barely. It was tight, but they survived. The school's lawsuit continued. Vance was convicted and served 2 years. The Bradford school closed, brought down by financial scandals. But Grace saw none of it. She was too busy studying anatomy, organic chemistry, and physics for her exams. The final confrontation was about to begin, and what was at stake wasn't just justice. It was Grace's very soul. And if she lost her humanity in the process, Eleanor Vance would have won anyway. 10 years later, the auditorium at the University Hospital was packed. 1,000 people. Renowned doctors, professors, students, press. Grace walked up the steps to the stage. 26 years old. Flawless white coat. A new stethoscope around her neck, but her father's old one tucked in her pocket. Hair down now, glasses replaced by contacts. Her steps were firm, confident. Nothing of the scared girl from 10 years ago. The presenter was announcing Dr. Grace Sullivan, receiving the Young Researcher of the Year award for her revolutionary work in treating pediatric cancer in underserved communities. Deafening applause. Flashes. She stopped at the center of the stage, looked at the audience. Front row, Maria, in a new but simple dress, tissue in hand, a smile wet with tears. Beside her, Mrs. Evelyn Reed, retired now, beaming. Dr. Samuel Chun in the second row, bursting with pride. Megan in the corner, a discreet camera, capturing it all. And there in the third row, trying to hide behind a man in a suit, Eleanor Vance, 68 years old, hair completely white, face lined by time and the weight of her prison sentence. Out on parole for 3 months. She didn't want to be there, but she was forced. Part of her alternative sentencing, attend graduation ceremonies of former students. And front the damage she caused. Grace held the microphone, took a deep breath. Thank you for this award. But before I talk about my research, I need to tell a story. Murmurs in the crowd. 10 years ago, I was 16 and I had a dream. I wanted to be a doctor. I came from a poor family. My father had died. My mother worked as a cleaner, but I studied 6 hours a day. I had perfect grades. And I believe that talent beat origin. Absolute silence now. Then, at a parent-teacher conference, a woman told me, "You will never be a doctor." Accept it, she pointed to Vance. That woman, Headmistress Eleanor Vance. Please stand up. Vance froze. People around her turned. Whispers. She tried to sink lower in her seat. Grace repeated, her voice firm. Stand up, Dr. Chun, sitting nearby, touched Vance's shoulder. Go on. You have to. Vance stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking. The entire auditorium was watching. Grace continued. He said I didn't have class. That medicine was for people who were well-bred. That I should accept my place. Do you remember? Vance opened her mouth, closed it, nodded weakly. Grace took a step forward. That day changed my life, but not in the way you imagined. Vance finally found her voice. It was a mistake. I've apologized. I've paid for it. Grace shook her head. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here because you need to see something. You need to understand what you did. Not just to me, to all of them. Vance looked down. Grace took a deep breath. I found out your story. The professor who humiliated you in med school, Dr. Silvana Roca. She told you that you didn't have the bearing of a doctor, that poor girls shouldn't be taking up spots. Vance's head snapped up, eyes wide. How did you? Grace cut her off. You dropped out. You tried to kill yourself. You spent 30 years destroying girls who reminded you of who you were. The audience was in shock. Journalists were scribbling furiously. Vance began to cry. I was protecting you. I wanted to spare you the pain I went through. Grace took another step, her voice louder now. Protecting? Leah Price killed herself. She was 17. Because you said the same words to her that Dr. Roca said to you. Vance sobbed. I didn't know she would... Grace didn't stop. Caroline Mendez dropped out of law school. Juliana Costa gave up on engineering. 15 girls. 15 crushed dreams. How many more will we never know about? The room was electric. Some were applauding, others were crying. Vance broke down, sat in her chair, buried her face in her hands. I'm so sorry. So sorry. It wasn't you I hated, it was myself. Grace felt something strange. It wasn't the satisfaction she had imagined. It was emptiness. She looked at the broken woman and saw only that. A broken woman. Not a monster. Not a villain. It's just someone who had never healed her own wounds and had spread them wherever she went. Grace took a deep breath. I could hate you. God knows I tried, but then I would be you. Vance looked up, and I don't want to be you. I want to be what you could have been if you had chosen to heal instead of to hurt. A heavy silence. Grace continued. You will not destroy me retroactively. I won't let you. But I won't pretend that what you did was acceptable. It wasn't, and it never will be. The ceremony's host approached, uncomfortable. Dr. Sullivan, perhaps we should. Grace held up a hand. Just one more minute. She looked at Vance. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Vance wiped her tears, looked Grace in the eye. Thank you. Grace shook her head. Don't thank me. Use it. Use the rest of your life to fix what you broke. Teach in prisons. Help poor girls. Do something that matters. Because if you die without doing that, your entire life will have been a waste. Vance nodded, swallowing hard. I'll try. Grace turned to the audience. And to all of you, teachers, doctors, leaders, look around. How many Graces are you ignoring? How many Eleanors are you creating? Change it. Applause erupted. A standing ovation. The entire audience. Maria was crying openly. Mrs. Reed was clapping hard. Dr. Chun was cleaning his glasses. Emotional. Megan was filming, tears streaming down her face. Even Vance was clapping, slowly acknowledging defeat, but also something bigger. Redemption. The presenter returned to the mic. Dr. Sullivan, your award. Grace took the plaque, looked at it. Read aloud. For excellence in research and a commitment to accessible medicine. She smiled. I dedicate this to my father, Dr. Michael Sullivan, and to all the girls who were told they couldn't get here. You are not forgotten. More applause. Flashes. Reporters shouting for interviews. Backstage after the ceremony, Grace saw Vance leaving through a back exit. They looked at each other. Vance started to walk past, stopped, turned. You really are a doctor. Grace nodded. I really am. Vance swallowed. Sorry feels too small. Grace agreed. It is. But it's a start. Vance nodded. She left. Grace watched her go. Small. Hunched. Carrying decades of regret. And she felt something she didn't expect. Hope. The people really could change. Maria ran up, hugged her daughter, hard, long. Your father is watching. I know he is. Grace rested her head on her mother's shoulder. I know it too. Mrs. Reed approached, held Grace's hands. I always knew, from the very first day. Grace smiled. Thank you for not giving up on me. Mrs. Reed squeezed her hands. You're the one who never gave up. Dr. Chun came over last. Congratulations, doctor. Your father would be so proud. Grace hugged her mentor. Thank you for showing me the way when everything was dark. Dr. Chun smiled. You did the walking. I just held the flashlight. Megan approached last. Can I? Grace nodded. The journalist gave her a quick professional hug. You know this is going to go viral all over again. Grace sighed. I know. But this time it's different, Megan agreed. It is. This time you control the narrative. Grace looked around. The auditorium was emptying. People talking in clusters. Life moving on. Yes. And the narrative is simple. It doesn't matter what they tell you. It doesn't matter who tries to stop you. Keep going. Megan smiled. Good headline. Can I use it? Grace laughed. You can. The story doesn't end with a victory. It ends with a new beginning. 6 months after the ceremony. Grace wakes up at 5 a.m., but now it's not to study under pressure. It's because she loves what she does. The apartment is different. Bigger. 3 bedrooms. Maria has her own space. There are pictures on the walls, medical books organized on a new shelf, a framed photo, Grace on stage receiving her award, Maria beside her, both smiling. In the kitchen, the smell of good coffee, not the cheap kind from before. Grace drinks her coffee looking out the window. She sees the sun rising over the city, thinks about how life has changed. The private practice she opened 3 months ago. Half the appointments are free for low-income families. The other half pays the bills and funds research. The public hospital twice a week. Pediatric oncology. Saving lives. Fulfilling the promise made to her father 10 years ago. The book she published, Medicine Without Class Borders, has been on the bestseller list for 4 months. Universities invite her to give lectures. Med students ask for her mentorship. She created an institute that provides full scholarships for low-income youth interested in medicine. There are already 63 active scholars. 5 graduated this year, all of them working in underserved communities, multiplying the impact. Grace doesn't work alone. She has a team, 3 residents, 2 nurses, an administrator, all committed to the same mission: accessible, quality medicine. Her fiancé, Dr. Raphael, she met during residency. He comes from a wealthy family but chose to work in the public health system. Their wedding is set for December. A full life. Complete, but not perfect. The scars remain. Maria's different too. She retired from hard labor. Now she coordinates volunteers at Grace's Institute, schedules appointments, welcomes nervous families, tells her story to inspire mothers who doubt their own children. She is fulfilled, at peace. She talks about her husband without crying, smiles at his memory. She sleeps well for the first time in a decade. Mrs. Reed, now fully retired, volunteers at the Institute twice a week. Biology for underprivileged high school students. Still brilliant, still a believer. When she and Grace pass in the hallway, they hug without words. The love between mentor and student remains intact. Dr. Chun has downsized his practice but hasn't stopped. At 70, he still sees patients. He oversees Grace's research, has become a father figure. He has dinner with Grace and Maria every Sunday. Megan won an investigative journalism award for her series on the case. She was promoted to senior editor. She continues to expose abuses in educational institutions. She has already exposed 12 similar cases, saved countless dreams. She and Grace became friends. They have lunch monthly. They laugh. They plan. They dream together. Eleanor Vance serves out her alternative sentence teaching in a women's prison. She tutors inmates interested in getting their GED. She pays for all the scholarships she can with her pension. She writes letters of apology to the 15 former students. Some respond, others don't. She accepts it. She doesn't expect forgiveness. She just tries to repair. Grace never spoke to her again after the ceremony. She doesn't need to. That chapter is closed. The sabotaged former students had varied fates. Caroline went back to law school, graduated at 32, and is now a public defender. Juliana finished her engineering degree, works for an NGO building affordable housing. 6 others returned to their studies. 3 became teachers, all of them moving forward, carrying scars but not letting them define them. Leah's family started a foundation in her name. It provides psychological support for students who are victims of institutional bullying. Grace collaborates, speaks at events, keeps Leah's memory alive, turning tragedy into legacy. One Saturday morning, Grace drives to the cemetery. Alone, she brings white flowers, walks to her father's grave. The headstone is clean, well-tended. She comes every week, puts the flowers in the vase, sits on the grass. "Hi, Dad, I brought news. We saved 3 kids this week. Advanced stage cancer. The protocol I developed worked. They're all going to survive." She smiles. "I think you'd be proud." She opens her bag, takes out the old, worn stethoscope, the same one she kept for 16 years, places it on the headstone. "I don't need it anymore, Dad. I have a new one, but this one stays here, with you, because it's the one that got me here." Tears stream down, but they are tears of peace, not pain. She remembers the parent-teacher conference 10 years ago. The stuffy room, the cruel words, the red face of shame, the urge to disappear. And she remembers what she felt. "I'll never make it." Now, sitting there, a board-certified doctor, an award-winning researcher, saving lives daily, she smiles. "I made it, Dad. Despite everything, I made it. The promise is kept. There are people who will tell you that you can't, that your dream is too big, that you should accept your place." Grace learned that those people are usually talking about their own fears, not your limits. Eleanor Vance said those words because she had given up on herself. She projected her own failure onto innocent girls, but Grace refused to accept that narrative, refused to let someone else's pain define her destiny. How many women have been told they weren't enough? How many gave up because they believed it? How many still carry buried dreams waiting for the courage to dig them up? Grace almost gave up. She had moments where the pain felt unbearable, where continuing seemed impossible. She remembered, someone else's no does not define your destiny. Only you do. Today, Grace saves lives not just as a doctor. She saves dreams as a mentor. Every student she guides is living proof, not to others, to herself, that it's worth resisting, that it's worth fighting, that it's worth continuing when everything screams at you to stop. It's never too late to start over. It's never too late to prove them wrong. It's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. And you? Have you ever let someone define what you can or cannot be? Have you given up on a dream because you were told it was too late or inappropriate or impossible for someone like you? Have you let the fear of other people's opinions be louder than the desire of your heart? Share your experience in the comments. Tell your story of overcoming or the dream you still want to achieve. Your words might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today to take the first step. You are not alone on this journey. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like. Next week, the story of the teacher who was fired at 58 and started from scratch, building her own empire. Remember, your worth doesn't depend on anyone's approval. See you soon.